Imagine the pitch-black quiet of an empty, locked Los Angeles mansion in 1983. Two figures slip through a dark hallway seeking a private moment of deep intimacy. Suddenly, a blinding beam of light cuts through the darkness, accompanied by a booming command to halt. It is the sudden, terrifying intrusion of authorities' threat of arrest and the sheer panic of two rising Hollywood icons caught red-handed. For over 3 decades, Goldie Hawn would tell the public a beautifully polished, G-rated story of how her legendary romance with Kurt Russell began over sweet conversations. But behind that innocent facade lay a chaotic, scandalous night that remained hidden until Kurt finally stepped onto a talk show couch and changed one crucial detail forever. On April 21, 2017, Kurt Russell walked onto the set of the popular daytime talk show Harry, hosted by Harry Connick Jr. He was in the middle of a massive press tour promoting Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2. For decades, Hollywood had adored Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn as the gold standard of celebrity romance. They were the ultimate golden couple, unmarried, deeply in love, and seemingly unflappable. Whenever Goldie was asked about their very first date back in 1983, she would offer a charming, heavily polished story about going out for drinks, dancing the night away, and sharing a sweet, memorable evening. It was a narrative refined by years of late-night interviews and talk show appearances tailored perfectly for public consumption. Kurt, however, decided it was time to tear up that script on live television. Sitting comfortably across from Harry Connick Jr., Kurt brought up that fateful night in Valentine's Day season of 1983. The couple had gone out to the Playboy Club for drinks where they spent hours talking and dancing. But when the club closed, neither of them wanted the night to end. Goldie mentioned that she had recently purchased a home in the Pacific Palisades, a property undergoing massive renovations, and suggested they go check it out. They drove over but quickly realized they didn't have a key to get inside. Rather than calling it a night, they decided to break in. Kurt scaled the side of the property, found an unlocked entryway, and let Goldie in. The house was completely empty, gutted by construction workers stripped down to bare studs with no furniture in sight. The couple wandered up to the master bedroom on the second floor, wrapped up in the excitement of the moment. That was when the date took an extraordinarily chaotic turn. While they were intimately engaged in the middle of an empty, dark, under-construction bedroom, bright white beams of light suddenly swept across the walls. 2 police officers had seen the suspicious activity, drawn their flashlights, and barged upstairs to investigate a potential burglary. The mood shifted instantly from high romance to immediate panic. Kurt recalled the officers shining their heavy flashlights directly onto the couple, trying to make sense of what was happening in the unfinished room. Connick Jr. leaned in, incredulous at the story unfolding before him, and asked Kurt directly how intense the confrontation actually was. "Did you guys literally get caught by the cops?" Harry asked, leaning forward in his chair. "Yeah, we did." Kurt laughed, completely unbothered. "We were in the bedroom layout-wise where the bed was going to be, and suddenly the flashlight hit us. They looked at us and said, 'What are you doing here?' We had to pack it up and get out. It was wild." The officers, recognizing the famous actors after a few tense moments, decided not to arrest them for trespassing. Instead, they firmly instructed the pair to clear out immediately. Left with nowhere else to go, Kurt and Goldie ended up checking into a nearby hotel room to finish their date. Kurt's live broadcast admission shattered a 30-year-old Hollywood fairy tale. For decades, Goldie had carefully edited out the trespassing, the dark construction site, and the police intervention, shaping the story into a clean, romantic dinner and dancing date. Kurt laid bare the reality their iconic love story didn't start with quiet luxury. It started with a near arrest in a dark, empty house. To understand how an A-list actress like Goldie Hawn found herself scaling a fence and dodging the police on a first date with a younger actor, the clock has to be turned back to the very first time they met years earlier, when age gaps, bad timing, and separate lives made a romance entirely impossible. To find the true beginning of the iconic bond between Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, the timeline has to rewind all the way back to 1966. The setting was the sound stages of Walt Disney Studios, where production was underway for the musical Western film titled The One and Only Genuine Original Family Band, which would eventually hit theaters in 1968. At the time, Goldie Hawn was a stunning 21-year-old dancer trying to break into the entertainment industry. She had secured a small featured role as a giggling girl named Gig. Kurt Russell, on the other hand, was just a 15-year-old child actor who was still years away from obtaining a driver's license. On the bustling set, Goldie stood out with her vibrant energy and effortless beauty. Kurt was already a veteran of Disney productions, but in every physical sense, he was still very much a kid. While they shared the same movie set, romantic chemistry was the absolute furthest thing from either of their minds. Goldie would later recount that initial meeting during interviews on BBC Radio 4 and CBS Sunday Morning, describing Kurt as genuinely adorable and charming for his age. But the 4-year age gap created an insurmountable divide during those formative years. She viewed him as a cute kid while her dating life was strictly reserved for older, more mature men. For Kurt, he was simply focused on doing his job on set and living the life of a typical teenager. They filmed their scenes, politely interacted, and when production wrapped, both went their separate ways without a second thought. There was no sudden spark, no hidden romance, and no subtle foreshadowing of what lay ahead. Their paths had crossed briefly in a crowded studio lot, only to diverge immediately. Their total lack of connection in 1966 highlights just how much timing dictates real life. Had they met when they were both in their 30s, things might have unfolded instantly. But in the late 1960s, the stark contrast between a 21-year-old woman looking for a serious partner and a 15-year-old boy made any relationship impossible. They were living in completely different worlds, separated by developmental milestones and life goals. The studio atmosphere was filled with chatter among the crew about the young cast members, but when asked about the teenage actor on set, Goldie did not mince words about where she stood. "He was adorable, but he was way too young for me," Goldie stated flatly when reflecting on those early Disney days. "I was 21 and he was 15. I was dating older guys. There was zero chance anything was going to happen back then." With that firm reality established, both performers moved forward into vastly different chapters of their lives. Following that brief encounter at Disney, their careers and personal lives split into radically different directions. Kurt Russell stayed loyal to the Walt Disney Company, signing a long-term contract that turned him into one of the studio's top child stars throughout the late 1960s and 1970s. He led a relatively grounded life, gradually transitioning from teen idol to serious Hollywood leading man. Goldie Hawn, meanwhile, was thrust into the relentless machinery of global fame. Within a few short years, her career exploded thanks to Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In and her Oscar-winning role in Cactus Flower. But that massive success brought intense public scrutiny, personal struggles, and a series of painful, high-profile marital breakdowns. It would take nearly 2 decades, multiple divorces, and a complete shift in their personal lives before fate brought them back into the same room. After parting ways with Disney in 1966, Goldie Hawn's career ignited with explosive speed. Between 1968 and 1970, she became a household name across America on the iconic sketch comedy show Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Her bubbly personality and infectious giggle instantly won over millions of viewers, but it also trapped her in Hollywood's rigid box, the cheerful ditzy blonde. Her talent, however, was undeniable. In 1969, Goldie delivered a breakout performance in Cactus Flower, earning an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Yet behind the bright spotlight, her personal reality was spiraling. On the night of the Oscars ceremony, Goldie was thousands of miles away in London, completely missing her career-defining moment. As she revealed years later in her 2005 memoir, A Lotus Grows in the Mud, the sudden onslaught of global fame brought severe anxiety and paralyzing panic attacks. The overwhelming pressure left her terrified, turning what should have been the happiest period of her life into a quiet mental nightmare. Goldie's private life proved just as turbulent as her rapid rise to stardom. In 1969, she married dancer Gus Triconis, but the relationship frayed under the weight of her skyrocketing fame and officially ended in divorce by 1976. That same year, she married musician Bill Hudson of the Hudson Brothers. What began as a promising romance quickly dissolved into an agonizing, highly publicized breakdown. By the time their divorce was finalized in 1982, the separation had curdled into deep bitterness. Bill Hudson took to the media to air their private grievances, leaving Goldie to shoulder the responsibility of raising their 2 young children, Oliver and Kate Hudson, as a single mother in the relentless glare of the paparazzi. Burnt by public scandal, emotional betrayal, and the chaos of spotlight romance, Goldie built a heavy emotional wall around herself. She resolved that her days of falling for men in the entertainment industry were over. Tired of chaotic artist ego battles and volatile set romances, she vowed to keep her personal life strictly separated from her work. During a candid moment reflecting on her second divorce, Goldie laid out her new, uncompromising boundary to her inner circle. "I am completely done with actors," Goldie declared, firmly cutting off any attempt at matchmaking. "They're self-absorbed, unpredictable, and I refuse to bring that kind of drama around my kids ever again." This fierce defensive mindset explains why Goldie felt the need to protect herself so fiercely. She needed stability, privacy, and a safe, carefully curated public narrative to shield her young family from further media intrusion. Her past had taught her that letting the public or co-stars too close only led to heartbreak and tabloid exploitation. Carrying deep emotional wounds, 2 failed marriages, and a strict rule to avoid fellow actors at all costs, Goldie Hawn stepped onto a new movie set in early 1983. She was focused solely on her work and raising Oliver and Kate, completely unaware that she was about to cross paths with the former Disney child star once again, only this time he was no longer a kid, but a ruggedly handsome, confident leading man. In early 1983, production began on Swing Shift, a World War II romantic drama directed by Jonathan Demme. Goldie Hawn was playing the leading role and serving as an executive producer on the project. Having spent years dealing with tabloid rumors and stressful divorces, she was determined to maintain absolute professional control over the production. When Kurt Russell walked into the room to read for the male lead role of Lucky Lockhart, the energy on set shifted instantly. 17 years after their brief encounter at Disney, Kurt was no longer a young teenage actor. He was 31 years old, confident, charismatic, and nursing a heavy hangover on the day of the audition. Goldie, determined to keep her boundary against dating actors, tried to stay strictly professional. But Kurt's relaxed attitude completely bypassed her emotional guard. Unfiltered and slightly woozy from the previous night, Kurt looked at Goldie and delivered an extraordinarily blunt opening line right in front of the casting team. Recalling that audition years later in a 2020 interview, Kurt admitted that his filter was entirely gone, leading to a surprisingly forward compliment that caught Goldie completely off guard. "I was horribly hungover and I just didn't have any line in my head," Kurt admitted with a grin. "I looked at her and said, 'Man, I didn't remember you having such a great body.' It came out wrong, but she just smiled and said, 'Why, thank you.'" Instead of taking offense, Goldie laughed. His directness was refreshing compared to the carefully scripted compliments she usually received from Hollywood executives. Kurt won the role, and as filming progressed, their chemistry was impossible to hide. However, starting a romance on set carried massive risks. Goldie was the producer, Kurt was her co-star, and the crew was watching every move they made. Any public spark would unleash a flood of tabloid headlines, distracting from the film and inviting unwanted public scrutiny into her life once again. To spend time together outside of set hours without sparking rumors among the crew, they needed a believable excuse. They decided to use their characters' scripted dance routines as the ultimate cover story. They informed the production team that they needed extra off-hours rehearsal time to perfect their swing dancing for an upcoming scene. Instead of heading to a studio rehearsal space, they agreed to meet up privately on Valentine's Day evening in 1983 at the Playboy Club in Los Angeles. What started as a covert work session quickly turned into hours of genuine conversation and effortless dancing. Free from the cameras and the watching eyes of the crew, the professional boundary between them dissolved entirely. When the venue began shutting down at the end of the night, neither Kurt nor Goldie wanted to head home. Going back to their respective houses meant dealing with family, kids, and real-world responsibilities. They wanted to keep the night going away from the spotlight. Goldie mentioned her newly purchased empty Pacific Palisades home that was currently undergoing total construction. It seemed like the perfect hideaway, completely isolated, unmonitored, and quiet. That late-night detour would mark the end of their carefully guarded secrecy, leading straight into the midnight break-in and police encounter that Kurt would reveal decades later on live television. For more than 3 decades, the legendary romance between Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell was grounded in one of Hollywood's most charming, heavily circulated stories. Whenever talk show hosts or magazine journalists asked about the night their celebrated relationship officially began, in 1983, Goldie offered a sweet, pristine narrative that captivated fans for generations. In her 2005 memoir, A Lotus Grows in the Mud, as well as in numerous print and broadcast interviews over the years, Goldie laid out her carefully polished version of events. According to her classic story, after leaving the Playboy Club, the two walked into the empty Pacific Palisades home. She had recently bought, the very same house that her daughter Kate Hudson would later purchase and live in as an adult. With no furniture inside and construction underway, Goldie described sitting together on the unfinished wooden stairs. She recounted how they spent hours talking about their lives, dreaming up future plans, and laughing about simple things. In her version, the evening culminated in a cozy, completely innocent craving, talking about going out to buy Oreo cookies, chocolate chip cookies, and cold cartons of milk. It was a picture-perfect Hollywood story, wholesome, romantic, and utterly safe for family audiences. That narrative was not created by accident. In the aggressive media landscape of the 1980s, public reputation could make or break an actor's career. Coming off 2 bitter, highly publicized divorces, Goldie was fiercely protective of her image and her young children, Oliver and Kate. She understood that early tabloid headlines about police interventions, trespassing, and chaotic late-night encounters in dark, under-construction houses could easily distort public perception. By crafting and sticking to the simple, endearing cookies and milk story, Goldie effectively managed Hollywood's rumor mill. She provided the press with a compelling, heartwarming story that satisfied their curiosity while shielding her private life and setting a clean, stable foundation for her family. Journalists regularly tried to dig deeper into the sudden romance on the set of Swing Shift, attempting to uncover hidden drama or scandal between the co-stars. but Goldie held her ground, delivering her sweet narrative with absolute conviction. "We didn't need anything fancy that night," Goldie insisted warmly whenever reporters pushed for more details. "We just sat on the stairs of that empty house, talked for hours, and wanted nothing more than some chocolate chip cookies and milk. It was that simple." For over 30 years, that clean, romantic tale stood firm as fact. It was retold in profiles, fan magazines, and television retrospectives, cementing their status as the ultimate down-to-earth celebrity couple. Goldie's PR strategy worked brilliantly, protecting her household and preserving an unbroken fairy tale image through 4 different decades. That peaceful legend held completely intact until one night in April 2017. Sitting under the bright lights of a television studio, Kurt Russell decided it was time to tear down the fairy tale and spill the raw, chaotic reality, leaving Goldie with no choice but to face the truth on public record. Following Kurt Russell's explosive live television confession in April 2017, the entertainment world immediately scrambled to verify the wild story. For over 30 years, fans had believed the sweet, carefully polished tale of a quiet evening spent eating cookies on a dusty staircase. Now Kurt had completely flipped the narrative, claiming they were caught in the act by police officers during a late-night break-in. The media immediately turned to Goldie Hawn for confirmation. In interviews given shortly after, including conversations with entertainment reporter Ruben Nepales in the Daily Mirror in May 2017, Goldie cheerfully addressed her partner's televised outburst. She did not deny the chaotic break-in, nor did she dispute the flashlights or the sudden eviction from the empty Pacific Palisades property. However, Goldie made sure to set the record straight on one crucial detail that Kurt had embellished for late-night television drama: the identity of the men who caught them. With a laugh, Goldie explained that the figures who barged into the room were not municipal police officers, but rather private security guards hired specifically to monitor the ongoing construction site. Because the house was undergoing major renovations, the property manager had posted security personnel to prevent vandalism and burglary. When the guards noticed movement on the second floor of what was supposed to be an empty building, they drawn their flashlights, rushed upstairs, and caught the 2 Hollywood stars completely off guard. Though they weren't actual city police carrying handcuffs, the guards were stern, uncompromising, and unyielding. They shone their powerful light straight at the couple and made it crystal clear that trespassing on an active job site was strictly off-limits. When asked about the sudden exposure of their private moment after 34 years of silence, Goldie delivered a sharp, lighthearted response that put the entire media frenzy into perspective. "Kurt always makes things sound like a movie script," Goldie chuckled during her interview. "They were private security guards, not city cops, but yes, they shone those terrible bright flashlights right on us and yelled, 'You two need to get out and go find a hotel.' And that's exactly what we did." This final piece of clarification solved the long-standing contradiction between the two stories. Goldie's original cookies and milk narrative was designed to protect her family's privacy and manage public perception during a delicate time in her life. Kurt's colorful TV version added high-stakes comedy for an audience. The actual reality sat right in the middle: a spontaneous, chaotic night involving private security guards, bright flashlights, and a quick exit to a nearby hotel room. Beyond the humor of their wild first date, the unraveling of this 30-year mystery highlights the real foundation of their extraordinary partnership. Having spent over 4 decades together without ever getting married, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn remain one of Hollywood's most enduring success stories. They famously chose to bypass traditional marriage certificates, viewing their relationship not as a legal contract but as a daily choice to remain together. Instead of tying themselves down with formal vows, they maintained their independence, functioning, as they often described, like 2 strong pillars standing side by side to support a single roof. Their ability to laugh off the exposure of their wild first date proves why their bond has lasted for so long. They never needed a picture-perfect fairy tale to prove their commitment. From a chaotic night under the glare of security flashlights to decades of shared family life, Kurt and Goldie proved that authenticity, humor, and mutual respect far outweigh any carefully scripted Hollywood myth.